For the longest time, I had always told myself, if you catch me making a tier list, that's how you know I've really hit rock bottom. That is how you know I am desperate beyond repair for content. So without further ado, here is a tier list of the best submissions for MMA. Starting off, we have Pereira's left hook that he knocked out Jamal Hill with. Now, after doing this, he received his black belt, so it is only fair we add this to the list. Now, in all honesty and all sincerity, I'm not sure if this really counts as a submission, but, you know, it got him his black belt, so we're putting it in C tier. Next, we have the arm triangle. Now, the arm triangle, as far as submissions go, it's up there as one of the decent ones, I would say. You have control over your opponent's body. You're not risking position going for it. Your opponent can sometimes turn to a base after you slide off to the side, but it's not quite as much of a risk as, certain other submissions. A downside I think is there with this submission is the fact that there's very specific mechanics you need to finish it. Most of the time when guys get that arm up, they just squeeze as hard as they can. But that's not actually what you want to do to finish the choke. What you need to do is drive your shoulder into their throat. That is how you really put the pressure on to get them to tap. Guys who are really, really high level with this submission and have really good positional grappling, they can pass the guard, they can get to mount. This is a difficult submission to stop, and for that reason, I'm putting it in B tier. But before we move on, I wanted to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, White and Black. Guys, everybody knows the most intimidating people to roll with are the ones decked out in the best gear, and that is exactly what you are getting from White and Black. I mean this in full sincerity. I have tried out a lot of other jiu-jitsu apparel brands, but nothing comes close to White and Black. All their stuff is super high quality. I love the designs. Every time I wear their stuff, I always get compliments. And you guys have an opportunity to get 40% off your total order if you use the code CHE40. It would really help me out, and you guys would be doing yourselves a favor. You can find their website in the description below. Again, use code CHE40. Next, we have the armbar. Now, I have always maintained the armbar kind of sucks in MMA. I'm just being honest. The number one thing about the armbar, and it's something that people do not realize, the reason why Tony Ferguson's arm completely bent the wrong way and he was still able to finish that fight is because you are not risking breaking your arm in an armbar. You're just not. Breaks are extremely... No. Breaking your arm is impossible in an armbar. It is not possible. There have been some fluke cases, right? Frank Mir broke Tim Sylvia's arm, but that wasn't in an armbar, at least not a correct armbar. You see, the armbar attacks your elbow joint, which is a joint, not a bone. You're not going to break your joint, you're going to hyperextend it. But Tim Sylvia had slipped his elbow out of the armbar, so Frank Mir just hipped into his forearm, and because they're at heavyweight, because these guys are weighing plus 250 pounds, all that force broke his forearm, but technically that's not an armbar. And it's for that reason that a lot of times you see guys escape armbars, because frankly, you can take putting pressure on your elbow joint. You need to have it fully sunk in. You can't allow your opponent any opportunity to move or to squirm or to adjust their arm in order to get the tap. And that can be difficult to do because most of the time you're going from being on top, controlling your opponent's body, to then quickly only having control over their arm. So their opponent can move their body, they can twist their arm, and that allows them to get out of the submission most times. So I'll be putting this one in C tier. It's not terrible, but it is just not the most reliable submission to hit in an MMA fight. Next, we'll be looking at the omoplata. Now, this is an interesting one because you really only see omoplatas in the gi. Not even in no gi can you pull off an omoplata on a consistent basis. So in MMA, it's even more difficult. If it wasn't for Charles Oliveira making Dustin Poirier roll with the omoplata and ending up on top and helping him win that fight, I would say the omoplata is useless. I mean, I cannot remember the last time I've seen somebody use it to their own advantage. Now, this attempt right here, it kind of gets discredited because Joe Rogan was freaking out about Charles Oliveira apparently grabbing his glove. When you really look at it closely, there's not really any evidence he actually did it. It just kind of appears that way because of how he's grabbing onto it. Now, the omoplata creates a similar force onto your shoulder as a Kimura does. You're just using your body to push the arm forward. The issue is, right, in the gi, it's doable because there's a lot of friction because of the fabric. No gi, it's really difficult because of how slippery it is. In MMA, it's way harder. Realistically, it should be used as a sweep to get the person to roll over as their only chance of getting out. But to actually finish it in an MMA fight, man, I don't think I've ever actually seen someone do it before. I'm sure somebody has, but it's rare. So I'll be putting this one also at, you know what? No, it's F tier. This is F tier. Yeah, it's F tier. It's F tier. It's F. It's F. I don't like. Nah, you know what? It's C. It's C. It has a place, but it takes a tremendous amount of skill to pull off. That's why I'll put it at C and not F. And now we have the Ezekiel choke right here. This is another one. In the gi, you can see Ezekiel chokes, but no gi, man, that's tough to pull off. Now, Oleinik is really the only MMA fighter that I know of that can consistently hit these. I know Volkov hit it on Tai Tuivasa. This is one of those submissions that would work on some of those fat heavyweights who just are honestly pretty unskilled, aside from the fact that they can throw bombs. But, you know, in any other weight class, at any other skill level, unless you're Craig Jones, you're not hitting Ezekiel chokes like this. So I'm going to be putting this one in F tier. And now we have the banana split. One of my favorite submissions right here. And honestly, you can reliably get to this position. If you go to take your opponent's back and they look to stand up, that is the perfect opportunity to hook their leg and get them in this position. Zabit did it. Aljamain Sterling did it. You know, it's definitely out there as far as submissions go, but honestly, in a weird kind of cosmic sort of way, I think it's slightly more reliable than an Ezekiel choke. So I'm putting it in C tier, and if you don't like that, fuck you. And now we have the Kimura. The Kimura, you know, it's a strong man position. It really only works if you're a lot stronger than your opponent. It's difficult. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a smaller guy hit a Kimura on a bigger guy? It just doesn't happen very frequently. But if you get into the position from half guard or from side control and you get that arm isolated, it's extremely strong. A Kimura is one of those you really have to tap to. You know, like I said with the armbar, you can take hyperextension to your elbow joint and keep fighting. But if you don't tap to a Kimura, you get a spiral fracture of your shoulder, the fight's over. I mean, there is no point trying to tough out a Kimura. If they rip it on you, fight's over no matter what. So I'm going to be putting this one also in B tier. I like the Kimura. I really, really like the Kimura. Now, let's see. What else do we got? We have the Twister. The Twister, you know, it's an Eddie Bravo move. You don't really see it outside of 10th Planet guys hitting it. In MMA, it's only been done a couple times. It takes a lot to get into the Twister position. You know, God, I mean, what can you say about the goddamn Twister other than the fact it's going to be in the C tier? And now we have the heel hook. Heel hooks, for those who are unaware, they changed the landscape of no-gi jiu-jitsu. John Danaher and his team, they mastered heel hooks, and they were ripping the ACLs of everybody. At this point, if you're competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today, you are well-versed in heel hooks. In MMA, we haven't seen this same kind of resurgence just because when you could punch, it's kind of risky. If you attack your opponent's legs while they have a base and they're standing up over you, it is extremely dangerous. Even Gary Tonin, who is an extremely, extremely high-level pure grappler, he moved into MMA and had a lot of success with heel hooks. But still, when he fought for the title against Ton Lee, he attacked the leg as Ton had a base over him, landed a shot, and knocked him out. So they're extremely risky, but if you can get your opponent knocked off their base and you're very high level in this submission, you will absolutely brutalize your opponent's knees. This is another one, you can't tough it out if your opponent really has it locked in. And even if you do tough it out, you're going to get hurt. Corey Sandhagen destroyed TJ Dillashaw's knee in their fight in the first round. Kevin Lee said Charles Oliveira destroyed his knees with heel hooks, and none of them were even super tight. In the case of Ryan Hall versus BJ Penn, that was a bad inside heel hook. So I think these have the potential to be in B tier, but because we haven't really seen them specialized in MMA at a very, very high level, I'm going to put them in C. Moving on to the Darce choke. The Darce, probably one of the most famous arm chokes in the UFC. You're not giving up position going for it. You can hit it from a lot of different places. You can hit it from a front headlock position. You can get it from on top in half guard. You could even hit this from bottom side control if you know what you're doing. It's extremely tight. If you have long arms, it's extremely overpowered. I'm putting the Darce choke in A tier. I don't care what anybody says. And now going on to the Bulldog choke. I'm a big fan of the Bulldog choke. The issue is with it, though, if you don't have the strength to smash watermelons and pumpkins with your bare arms, it's going to be tough to finish the Bulldog choke. Something I will never forgive Dominic Cruz for was during the Ben Askren-Robbie Lawler fight. He could not shut up about the fact that it's over the chin. It doesn't choke. It just hurts if it's over the chin.
He might have been out for a second. I don't think it's under his neck.
Look at this.
It's on his chin. His chin's in there.
That's true.
His chin is in there, so it hurts, but it's not in the blood. So he wasn't choking.
That is just simply not true. If your opponent is very, very physically strong, if they can crush watermelons and they get a choke sunk in over your chin, it will put you to sleep, 100%. Same thing with neck cranks over the chin. You will 100% go to sleep if it's locked in. And I don't know by 100% chance if Robbie Lawler really went out from that choke, but the way he dropped his arm, he cannot be upset about the ref stopping that fight. You absolutely cannot be upset. His arm dragged off Askren's head and bounced off the floor. He cannot be upset about it. But because this is a real specialized submission, you need to have a lot of attributes for you. Don't have a lot of control over your opponent's body. F tier. F tier. Look, it can be effective like the Ezekiel, but boy, that's going to be an optimistic one to hit. A real optimistic one. Now, moving on to the rear naked choke. You know, you're not giving up position with it. This is one of those chokes that if you get it fully sunk in, your opponent is not going to last longer than a few seconds. Again, even over the chin, you're going to put your opponent to sleep if you get it fully sunk in. So this one, by no shocker, is going to be the S tier. And now, moving on to my favorite submission, the Buggy choke. I'm telling you guys this right now. The Buggy choke is S tier. And before you think I'm joking, the reason why I'd put it in S tier is because nobody in MMA is ready for it. Nobody. Every time someone in MMA gets to side control, they are asking to get Buggy choke just because MMA fighters are not doing them. But if you get a Buggy choke fully sunk in, there really is no escape. Most guys are going to try to stand up. If you have a Buggy choke locked in and your opponent stands up, you do risk getting slammed. But if they stand up, you can just let go of the Buggy and you've escaped side control. I guarantee you this right now. If fighters started going for Buggy chokes right now, we would see a lot of submissions. Then after about a month and a half of this submission being mainstream, you would never see it again because people are going to be ready for it. So after that initial period of it catching fire, it's got to drop to F tier because really, if you know your opponent's going to go for a Buggy choke, you can stop it pretty easily by just putting your arm across their waist so they can't lift their legs up. But before that happens, it's S tier. It's S tier. Now, moving on to the regular guillotine. The regular guillotine is very, very strong. It's not the same as the arm-in guillotine. This one, you have one arm around your opponent's neck and the other arm grabbing your own hand, hiking it up. This one's extremely tight. It's difficult to escape if you have it fully locked in. And I'm going to put the regular guillotine in A tier. Now, the arm-in guillotine, the one Dustin Poirier loves going for, this one is very specialized to finish. There's a lot of mechanics that people don't really know. Usually they just squeeze their arms, but that's not how you finish it. If you want to learn all the mechanics from this choke, you can check out this video I made about it. But if you jump for an arm-in guillotine and you can't finish, which most guys can't, you're going to end up on bottom. It's a bad spot to be in MMA. Very, very few people can hit this against the best fighters in the world, guys like Charles Oliveira, Brian Ortega, but for most people, though, it's an F tier. It's F tier. Next, we have the triangle. The triangle is an iconic submission. If you're off your back in guard, this is probably the only realistic submission you can hit. An armbar from guard is pretty hard, but in a triangle, that's more doable. It's tough, though, because when you look at the tip top of MMA, if somebody has you in full guard, they are very, very aware of what you're trying to go for. Either an armbar or a triangle, and they're really ready to defend it. But if you're super high level with it, you can catch a lot of guys off guard, but like I said, it's a tough one to fully sink in. You definitely see it at a bit lower level of MMA, but at the tip top, it's kind of sort of non-existent. I'm going to put it at B tier. If you're really high level with it, they're super dangerous, but most guys they're simply not. Next, we have the R word choke. I can't say the actual word because I'll get demonetized, but I think you guys know what I mean. It's pretty much when you just squeeze your opponent's neck, as you can see here. It just doesn't work. You're pushing on their Adam's apple, and if their opponent has you in guard, you're asking to get armbarred because you're just putting your arms out there for someone to throw their legs over. This does not work. It's F tier. And now finally, we have the knee bar. The knee bar, it's a bit tougher to isolate your opponent's leg and prevent them from turning. But it's safer than the heel hook because if you have a knee bar, that means your opponent does not have a base. And knee bars can be really nasty if you fully hip into it. So with all that being said, it's a C tier. All right, this is all I got.